All right. Hello, coffee makers, not coffee takers. He is the master of cyber farms, Alfredo B. Nash Jr., and I, the people's chief, Dr. Joseph J. Miller Jr., and we are your hosts for the Cyber Coffee Hour. Alfredo and I hail from Mount Vernon, New York, and we are excited to share our experiences and stories along with those of our incredible guests. Our mission is to impart knowledge, enhance understanding, and cultivate a sense of community in the expansive world of cyberspace. So for today's show, we will have a coffee chat with illustrator and animator of Art by Tajha Winkle. Tajha Winkle is a skilled 2D animator, digital marketer, and illustrator from St. Catherine, Jamaica, dedicated to creating impactful content for children. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Animation from the University of the West Indies. She has enhanced her expertise with a digital marketing certification from Google and courses in business analytics. With over 6 years of freelance experience, Tajha has worked with local and international clients, showcasing her talent in projects like an animated short for Sesame Street and participating in the UK Screencraft Works mentorship program. Her work has received recognition at prestigious events such as Anime Carib and Conchel International Film Festival. Tajha's commitment to cultural representation is evident in her travels, where she explores diverse art forms to enrich her creative perspective. Notably, she represented Jamaica alongside UNESCO and France, engaging in cultural exchange focused on animation. Tajha volunteers at Reconnect JA, a nonprofit organization that aims to bridge the gap between second and third generation Jamaican youth in the diaspora and their heritage. Her passion for making a positive impact through her art and community involvement reflects her dedication to celebrating the richness of Caribbean culture. Tajha Winkle, welcome to the Cyber Coffee Hour.
It's great to be here, guys. Thank you for the invite.
So,
Joining us.
absolutely, for sure. So, this was actually something in the making, maybe a couple of years in the making. So, for those who don't know, those listening, Tajha Winkle is actually the person who helped create the intro for our podcast.
Yeah.
From what started from some scribbles, some chicken scratch on paper, getting between our friends and I, getting ideas out and how we wanted to look, just getting the whole look and feel of it. And Tajha was very instrumental in that. So this is definitely appreciate you, Tajha, for coming onto the show, and definitely want to recognize you and highlight you during this because again, I personally feel that as we go through our journey, we will encounter those who make an impact and be able to help, at certain stages along our journey. And you definitely were instrumental, a big part of, as we got going right off the ground. So again, thank you. And so we just want to hear from you, Tajha, directly first. First, I want to know just how you doing, how you've been going, and also maybe you could just share, maybe just from our experience as we work together and getting that project going.
Sure, guys. So, hey, I've been doing pretty good. Been keeping really busy. Since that project, I've been working on quite a few things. I've worked on a short film recently, and some other visual media projects in the background, but can't speak too much about those as yet. Lots of good stuff on the way, guys. But honestly, that project was amazing for me. I was really glad when you guys reached out and told me what you were thinking and that you wanted to start this podcast and that you needed an intro. I was very excited because this was the first time I would say I had done something for a podcast for an intro like that. So I was a little nervous. I was like, all right, but let me see what I can do. Because one thing about me, I'll say yes and I'll figure it out along the way.
Right.
Your chicken scratch was great, by the way. I got the picture real quick. I was like, all right, this is what you want. I got you. Yeah, but you guys were a pleasure to work with. You were open to any changes. You were just open to the whole process, and really that is what art is about. It's just being open to not just the finished product but the journey as well, because the whole thing is a journey from like start to finish. It's a conversation between what we both want and at the end what we want to see, and just making something that you're really proud of at the end.
Absolutely.
100%.
Alfredo, definitely would just Larry, how you been doing the latest, and also maybe just share, kind of build off what Tasha just shared. Just your thoughts during that time when we were getting off the ground.
Will do. So first, yeah, I guess I'm all right. It's been a little bit of a rough camp since a couple months of navigating this wonderful job market. Got some stuff landing as far as trying to keep the coffee beans coming in.
Yep.
And keeping the lights on. So I am a little bit worn out from that. Back office stuff with FEMA training I'm doing now, and I'm also doing pesticide applicator on the side of the desk. Outside of that, just rocking and rolling. But to your point, Tajha, I was very inspired by your creative energy. You had a very unique animation style. You got our vision from our chicken scratch and turned it into beautiful work. So we were, I have the sketchbook somewhere over here too, but we had multiple renditions and you kept us in line with your creative energy. So you gave us back sketches, you gave us colored and non-colored drawings, you gave us additional mock-ups and sound cues. That was something I learned, which was really cool to see your unique sounds and your unique animation style paired with those sounds. So I appreciate it because I remember that journey from a little sketchbook and really ugly looking drawings to like, oh my god, this could be created and beautiful. So that's really appreciated. Reminiscing on that journey.
That's awesome, man. And I just kind of paraphrasing scripture, you want to write down the vision and make it plain, and I think that's what we did. Even though, yeah, maybe chicken scratch or some little ugly thing, but I think that's all you need. And I think for those listening and those of you that have that entrepreneurial mindset, if you want to go into business for your own or whatever it is that you want to do, don't count yourself out. Write it down, write your ideas down, and protect it too, because you will encounter those that, oh man, that's stupid, oh that's whack. Now, if there's something that you truly believe in, something that you feel very strongly about, be very selective with who you share it with, but then also at the same time, pursue it, write it down, and also know that what you do write down is not going to be the final version too. Don't get in that mindset thinking like, oh man, this has to be perfect. No, you're going to have many revisions as we did. So, and I think again, I think that's part of the journey. That's part of it, because you see from what you started into where you are, where you land, there's going to be a vast difference. But the main thing is that you do start. If you don't start, you're never going to get to the end. So that'll probably be a little bit of advice for, I guess, again, for our listeners, both listening and watching. So whatever you want to do, just go for it. If you feel very passionate about it, even if you go on, whether you're doing it for yourself or you pair up with a couple of people or whatever the case is, if you have that same mindset, just like I said, write it down, make it plain, and then go to work, and then surround yourself with that circle of like those who can help nurture that idea and help push it forward, because that's the main thing, and just have that focus.
100%. One more thing too, be patient with yourself and others as well. A lot of folks have, various skill sets, various mindsets, various impatient things, thinking that things can just hurry up and be done. But take your time and give yourself the space and grace to allow it to be done properly and in a timely fashion.
Right.
A lot of times we want to hurry up and get out there and get our vision into the world. It might not be the right time. It might not be the right reason or season as well. So be patient with yourself and those that you're working with in the circle to hear their expertise and quiet down, some things that might be creating a lot of noise during the process.
Absolutely. All right. So, Tajha, again, thank you for being on the show, and we'll go ahead and get started. So, and this is also very near and dear to me as well, just because this taps into my Jamaican roots as well. So, if for those listening, it's definitely by design. We definitely have quite a few guests, from Jamaica, because I do want to big with that part of my bloodline. So, but Tajha, how do your Jamaican roots and experiences traveling around the world influence your animation style and storytelling?
Sure. So I'll start with Jamaica first. Of course, I was born here. A lot of our art that originates in Jamaica is usually super colorful and very bright and in your face. it will be one of the first things you spot. Like there's no subtlety about the art that comes out of here. You see it and it just pops. It's just like right in your face.
Yeah.
Same thing with the music and the people. Like everybody's just gonna tell you how it is. People are really friendly and bubbly and exuberant. It's an amazing energy in the creative space as well. People are always bouncing ideas around, especially artists. Like even if you're introverted, once you get around a good group of artists, the energy is just amazing.
Right.
So in my art, I wanted to really reflect that energy and reflect that vibrancy and that color. I've always loved color so much ever since I was a little girl. I loved the way it could tell stories. I loved the way you could just make anything any color in art. I specifically remember one of my aunts, we were coloring in one of my coloring books, and we were doing like a horse, and she was coloring her horse hair brown. I was looking at her and I was like, I want my horse's hair to be a rainbow. And I just sat there and I made a little rainbow hair for my horse, and I felt so empowered. And I feel like that's kind of just how it's been with me, where I look at something that you might think is just one color or one texture and be like, you know, when you really look at it though, like I always say, for example, roads in Jamaica, they're not just black. They're full of other little different colors and textures based on when like the road was built, if it's in disrepair, if it's brand new. So when you're drawing those things, you can really like see the different textures and colors. And I think in order to bring things to life, you really need to look at that, because that's what makes every location and everything unique. My travels, I think, really diversified how I went about that and gave me more of, I think, an appreciation for just depicting like a local landscape versus a landscape abroad. I went on a whole Twitter thread about how grass is so different in North America. You guys have different grass over there. That's so crazy. Because I used to look at these drawing tutorials and be like, the grass looks so thin and wispy in these tutorials, and I just don't understand why. Because here the grass is like usually low and really thick and very spiky. So I'd be like, I don't understand. And then I started to travel and just really look at the grass and the trees. Like if you pass me by on the street, you're probably wondering, why is this girl just looking down at the grass in front of this house? And it's because I'm trying to like analyze what makes it so different. And once you realize that, you're like, all right, cool, I can apply this to my work. And I've also gotten the opportunity to meet other artists from like the Ukraine, from France, from Germany, from all over the world. And I've seen their work, even the Dominican Republic, even though it's right there. Sometimes it's so hard to meet the people in your Caribbean space as well. And I'd look at their art and I'd ask them, oh, how did you do that? And they'll say, oh, you know, I did X, Y, Z, and it's actually kind of simple. And then they'll let me know, and I'm able to apply that to my work as well, because sometimes there'll be a certain technique that just really appeals to me a lot more. Because for me, I love texture. I love things feeling like they're made by hand. I don't necessarily want to make it be too perfect in that way. So a lot of times I'll lean into the imperfections of the art forms. Like most of my children's work will look like somebody was using a pencil crayon. And you know, when you use pencil crayon and you're coloring, sometimes you'll see like little grains on the texture of the pencil crayon come off on the paper. I aim for that look as well, because to me it's so gorgeous. And I've been inspired by so many people doing art physically as well as digitally, and those different techniques from all across the world, how the grass looks, how the trees look, even just how the people look. I mean, all of that really just influences how my work looks and how I just want it to feel.
That's awesome.
That. As a person that grew up, as a person who grew up with only 64 crayons in the Crayola box, you just painted a new landscape for me by that description. So we're going to dive into, as a freelancer in animation, what are some of the biggest challenges you face, particularly as a Caribbean artist?
Oh wow, where do I begin? I would say two of the most challenging things I would face is just the appreciation I think people have for artists. In Jamaica, art isn't always seen as a very viable career. And I do understand that, because there are quite a bit of hardships here. So parents, they want to be like, yeah, you need to set on the right path. You need to do X, Y, Z so that you can get blah, 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 get like a good government job and all of those things. Because they really want to set you up. But then there comes a time when you have to be brave and be like, yo, like, I get you, but I feel really passionate about this, and it's not just the passion. I'm really willing to put the work in. So a lot of times it's proving yourself over and over again to not just your parents, but to your society, and sometimes even your clients, because they'll come to you and they'll be like, "Hey, I want a drawing," but then at the same time they're kind of like, "Oh, but it's just a drawing. It's not that hard." I'm like, "Boy, let me break it down to you what this entails." I don't know if you guys felt overwhelmed when you had commissioned me and I was like breaking down the different steps to get to your animation. I don't know if you felt overwhelmed by all the steps, but I feel like a lot of people underestimate just how much work goes into something that seems so small,
Appreciate it after we saw 8 different renditions. I was like, wow, this is serious.
Right. No, and yes, because the breakdown was very very detailed for a very short clip.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, you would think we're trying to make a full movie. I mean, it was just so I'm in mind. I'm thinking like, man, what if we did like a 15-minute piece or a half-hour piece?
Oh my
How much
gosh.
more work would be involved for that? So no, yeah. At least for me, speaking for myself, I think that gave me a lot of insight into that world and what really is involved and what has to take place for that. Because just being ignorant in that sense, I don't know, So, but I do appreciate the expertise that you showed and the level of granularity that's required to make sure that is right. So, I definitely learned something for sure.
Oh
My
yeah, absolutely.
my brother kind of gave me a glimpse in it 20 years ago, but when he watched the full font documentary on the Helvetica family. So I want to ask you this as a creative because I asked him and I want to see if it lines up. Do you feel the world has lost their appreciation for artists? Like I like what you said about, your journey and the dynamic in Jamaica, but what about the rest of the world? Do you feel like they've lost that appreciation for artists?
I feel like in some sense, yes. I think because so I always make a joke with my friends. I'm a fellow artist internationally as well. We'll say, "Oh, back in the Renaissance, like they used to feed you and put you up in a house for a painting that you could work on for the next 6 years. Like, where bring that back, please." But I think a lot of times people see how art evolves and just how the technology incorporates itself into the art. They make the mistake of thinking it makes things easier. So you put less work in, but that's definitely not the case. I mean, it still involves a lot of technical knowledge. If anything, I've kind of found it a bit more technical to draw on my drawing tablet online than I have to make physical art as well. It's a whole different set of skills that you need. I mean, the
Right.
fundamentals are the same, like color theory, understanding how shapes work, understanding how space works, and timing. But once you start applying it into the software and you realize, hey, this is a whole other skill, like this is a whole other ball game. Like it's one thing to know technically how to do something, but to actually practice the skill and to see yourself improve, now that is just a whole different thing. And I think a lot of people, they don't get to see behind the scenes sometimes of how that technical knowledge comes to be. So sometimes in a way, I think we've lost that appreciation because people don't get to see behind the scenes. They think technology and art makes it easier, but no, it just makes it just a little different. It makes the journey just a little different. Like it might be less messy because I'm not covered in paint, but I'm still hunched over my computer stressing over a line that just won't look the way I want it to look.
Right.
Like sometimes I'm stressing over one thing for like 6 hours because it just is not turning out the way I want it to look. And it's the same on a sheet of paper. Like, and I think it's worse on a sheet of paper because there's only so many times you can erase before the paper starts to tear. So it's like,
Right.
it's a whole different thing. And I don't blame people for not having that appreciation because I think sometimes our curriculums as well in school don't really emphasize the importance of art. And I think people forget that art is all around us. Like the shirt I'm wearing, someone had to design these leaves on them. Like even your degree in the background, like a graphic designer had to sit there and like click through like several different fonts to figure out like what will look appealing to you and make you look at it and be like, yeah, I did that. I'm a professional. This looks professional, so I'm a professional, So I think a lot of times people forget that art is all around us, and you can't really blame them sometimes because it's not really spoken about. But that's one of those things that I really want to emphasize when I talk to people, not just my clients, but also on social media as well. Just like giving them behind the scenes of the processes, not just the positive parts, but also the negative parts, like when a file crashes on you and like you have to start things over from scratch. It's really a journey. So I think people's appreciation for art has shifted a little bit, especially with technology, it's gotten more complex. But I think deep down, people still do appreciate art and what it has to offer the world.
Respect. I definitely got a new appreciation having almost failed a landscape graphics class. I thought I was too technical and I didn't need to draw by hand. I was humbled quickly. Humbled super quickly. So that plays into another question too. You mentioned a desire to create content that positively impacts children's lives. What themes or messages do you prioritize in your work, and why do you believe they are essential for young audiences?
Sure. So one of the things that I prioritize is positive representation of Black children. I feel like a lot of times in media, the narratives are very white dominated. And especially in Jamaica, which is very funny since we import a lot of our media from North America, we tend to see a lot of like white faces reflected, but we rarely see like Black children just like having fun. And when we do get to see them, they're in these very like narrow stories. You're only allowed to have stories about like, oh, embracing my natural hair, or you're only allowed to have stories about, oh, the struggles and hardships of being Black or an immigrant. But what about the Black kid who likes to bake? You know, like I want to see those books too. Like I want Black joy to be celebrated. I want diversity of faces. I know a lot of times too, when I was a child, I used to read through these books, and the most interesting faces are the ones I would pause on the most, because they didn't just have like, you know, the tiny little nose and the tiny little whatevers. They had like different noses and different lip shapes and different head shapes. Like I want children to see that and feel represented. So that's one of the big things in my work. That's one of the major themes. Another one is just breaking down complex feelings into beauty. So a lot of times we forget that children also experience emotions such as grief and fear and anxiety. You know, the default of childhood is not just happiness. We do have these things. We have frustration, and just because a child is frustrated doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So I want to be able to relay those emotions as well in my work. And I want them to feel like, oh yeah, I'm frustrated and it's okay to express myself. Or I'm sad and it's fine to feel sad. Especially too, as children of color, like Black kids, a lot of times our emotions are like over policed because people play it off as like aggression, but that's not the case. You know, I want them to be able to say like, hey, I'm allowed to feel sad. Like, I have this cover that I made. It's called Annoyed Janoy, and he's making up his face because everything's just annoying him today. And I love it so much because he's just like, I'm so mad. But to me, it's so endearing because it's like you get to see this little Black boy be angry and he's not scary. He's just cute. You know, he's just annoyed at the day. He's just looking nice and cute because he's just a kid. You know, at the end of the day, they're just kids, and that's what I want to relay in my work.
I think I think that's very spot on, because I think being able to express and embrace those emotions and to have the freedom to express those emotions is healthy, because as you mentioned, it shouldn't be tied to, so let's say, you know, having a certain emotion shouldn't be tied to any sort of connotation to say, okay, if he or she is angry, that means they're going to be disruptive or this and that. No, it could be just they're just not feeling it for the day. I mean, we all go through it. But I mean, and that's what makes us human, you know, understanding, recognizing those emotions, and then going through it. Don't try to, cause I think one of the worst things you could do is to suppress it and try to hold it back
100%.
because, as you mentioned, because of maybe what society may say or how they may interpret it. So then you as an individual internalize it because, okay, I don't want so-and-so to think I'm doing this and that. So, but then that's doing self-harm, I would think.
100%.
So I think, Taj, I think that's great that you're doing that and really giving light to that, because it is important, especially from a very young age,
Yeah.
to understand those feelings and know that it's okay to express those feelings. Even I think, honestly, for anyone listening and those here within this digital room, if anyone has sat in a chair with a therapist and one of the things, one of the unifying things that they will ask you is, or what will tie back to is like your childhood, what was your childhood like, or what are some, because that's where a lot of our mindset, our feelings are shaped as how we grew up. And so I think it as again, it's very important that we understand those feelings, and that knowing that it's okay to express it definitely will help us in the long run as we get older. So I think that's very important what you're doing.
You're making me want to change therapists because I haven't gotten that question yet. But my kids will make fun of me because there is a movie, I had to look it up on the side of the desk, called Inside Out 2. When you said that, Taj, I was like, oh my God, because we went to the movie theaters to see that, and it was an eye opener. Literally, I have to watch the first one again because, being a dad, I was like, oh, this is cool, and kind of walked off. But the second one, oh my God, it's for every young person out here to understand, like, that was a well done and creative work of art to show kids all the different various emotions and levels to it. Because if you watch the first one, she was very young. Now she's like, I think, a preteen, right? So she's going into different schools, and all the different characters and colors of the emotions was very well done. So, I think you're right. It takes with unpacking the childhood, which is, like you said, Dr. Joseph, from therapy, but also realizing the colors of all the different emotions, their feelings, the different transitions between different ages as well, all the way into adulthood.
Right.
It's like a landscape, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. So Tasha, your participation in the UK Screencraft Works mentorship program, highlights your commitment to advocacy. Can you discuss some of the barriers you've identified for aspiring animators in the Caribbean and how you believe they can be addressed?
Sure. So, I want to say thank you so much to Screencraft Works. They were really amazing. They really listened to the people who they were mentoring, and that is a big deal because I know sometimes we go into these programs and we kind of feel like we're just dropped here, and we just have to just be grateful and be like, oh, thank you, and not say anything. But they were super receptive to feedback, especially when I mentioned like, hey, being in the Caribbean, our dollar is not as strong as the US dollar, and a lot of times the software and the hardware is priced really, really high. I mean, even for US citizens, like, not everybody can afford like a $2,000 laptop, like, that's pretty expensive. I think the exchange rate here in Jamaica, that's probably like 300 and something thousand Jamaican dollars. Yeah, so that's what the exchange rate is like, to give you an idea. And most people here don't really make more than, I think, 60 to 80,000 Jamaican dollars a month. So it's a really big gap, right? So that's one of the things that I brought up. I was like, if we really want to be serious about addressing the barriers for people in the Caribbean to really break into the industry, we have to realize a lot of the times that the software that is industry standard is really just super unaffordable to us. And because of that, we're unable to train in it or practice in it. So when we do eventually get access to that software, we tend to feel behind our peers because even though we do have the technical know-how, we haven't been introduced to certain softwares that they might have gotten access to. So there's a lot of catching up that we end up having to do. So it's like double labor, I would say, like trying to catch up, but then also trying to prove that, hey, I know how to do this thing. It's just the software that is the barrier. So I brought that up, and we talked, and I said, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get sponsorship for the people who are doing animation in this program to have access to this software called Toon Boom Harmony. So Toon Boom Harmony for animators is like the software. The studios use it, the indie animators use it, especially on this side of the hemisphere. Very, very big software. So we spoke about it. I was a little scared that it wouldn't work out, but I said it anyway because, I mean, the worst that you can say is no, right? Fine. So I asked. So we ended up getting to email back and forth between Toon Boom and let them know that, hey, we're doing this program. It would be really great if you could give the people in this program access to this software at a discounted rate or just for free for the duration of the program. Now, I was surprised when Toon Boom emailed back and they were like, I'll do you one better. We're going to give you access to the software for an entire year for free. We are also going to throw in a course for free as well for you to get trained in this software. And on top of that, we also want to do an interview with you and your mentor as well. I was completely blown away. I was like, this is amazing, right?
Yeah.
I was so happy. I was on cloud nine. Like, I use that software so much. I'm proud to say I'm proficient in it. It's a really great software, so I was really grateful for that. Then later down, when I finished the program, I invited some of my other animation friends to join, and they did, and they came back to me and they were like, girl, thank you so much. Like, this was a really great opportunity. They're really grateful that they got to use Toon Boom as well, because they were still holding that promise, and I hope they keep up that promise, because so many of us getting that opportunity is amazing. And I also hope that like more software companies and hardware companies will want to invest in Jamaican creatives, because we are so resourceful. Like, we make beautiful work even though we might not necessarily have all the equipment to do so. So it's like, imagine if we got access to like everything that people have in like Canada and the US. It would be crazy. So that was one of the things I was really passionate about, and still am, just getting people access to the tools they need and the resources they need, and just being like, hey, you got this, so make the best of it, and let's do this thing.
Boom, Tajha, go ahead and pat yourself on the back. You laid that track down. You're the pioneer. You opened that door. You removed that gatekeeping tactic. You laid the track down. So pat yourself on the back there, Tajha.
Thank you.
I think that's, our friends, I think that's definitely, for what Tajha shared, that's, some of the problems, say when we're looking at cybersecurity, like for those who are trying to enter the cybersecurity field, there are things components that can help someone in their career, but a lot of them are very cost prohibitive. So it's almost like it kind of markets certain people out of. So just looking at conferences, for instance, I attended Black Hat for the very first time last year. The only reason I did it because not that I didn't want to before, it cost too much doggone money. and the only reason I did it
too. All of them do.
Yeah. And the only reason I went because my employer paid for it. So if it wasn't for that, I was not going. So I mean, and again, I just give that as one example, but some of these things that where folks can really benefit are those who are very hungry, that want to learn and really develop in their respective career fields. Certain things that can really help them advance and elevate and grow, or they're being priced out of it because it's very cost prohibitive, and we need to try to level set and make it equal for everyone. It shouldn't be based on that. It should be based on individuals' desire and hunger as to what they want to do, and really, if they're looking for, let's look at within the art field as an example, if they really want to learn and grow within art as their specialty, why are you creating barriers? Make it equal for them, and then let the playing field, or I'd say maybe even the judgment field, be on how they perform and how they do within it. But make it open for everyone, and see how everyone performs once they're in.
I'm gonna try to not get hyped up because you just sparked something in my brain here, right? When you talk about talent shortages and talent gaps, no one's bridging the poverty gap that leads to the adversity in cybersecurity. Nobody's acknowledging. I'll say that for all of our listeners and anybody listening, the access to the software, to the conferences, and to the revenue allows me to stay hungry and level up. Anybody like me in this field. So I'm very shocked and very actually honored to see that Screenworks reached out to you and said, hey, this is how we were going to do it for artists like you. If that was to happen in cybersecurity, it'd be over. there will be no talent gap. There will be no revenue hit or shortages of talent, because everyone that's hungry will show up when they get sponsored in that manner and when they're believed in, when they're trusted. It sounds like Screenworks trusted you and the community of artists to give you access to that resource, Toon Boom. I had to look it up because I didn't know. Thank you for that, Taj. I didn't know what Screenworks was. I didn't know what Toon Boom was. So I looked it up really quick, and it's because of that belief in the professionals that all of you now have access to an invaluable tool set. Right. So that's message received. The second part of it is, if that was to happen in cyber, I guarantee you there would be no talent gap at all. Because it's not just it's not just the pay gap at that point. It's the skills to pay the bills. I keep saying this on the show for our listeners. Anybody that gets that kind of sponsorship in cyber will go and get the skills and the pay. Right. They just need that first hit to get over their little adversities or big challenges too. I'm not gonna minimize it. There are some big challenges, to your point. Re:Invent is unobtainable to folks that want to get a certification. Right? Black Hat, the industry standard, unattainable if they're not in cybersecurity with one of those employers you talked about. And then the community colleges are now inaccessible, right? So some of them in my area are free now, but all throughout the country, some folks still don't go to community college to get to a grant or get financial aid or get something to help them go to a conference, right? Trade shows include, I love those, where the vendors show up and they show you all their new tools, they demo it. Some of them are like $500 or so a ticket. So how are you going to do that how are you going to do that without the sponsorship from a company that believes you can get after it? You know, so that's a huge one. We might have to do a separate episode on that.
Yeah, it definitely is huge. I posted on Twitter the other day. I was like, so our government has been talking about mobilizing the orange economy. I actually got to speak at a conference about that a couple of years back. And the point that I was really trying to make is that it's not just about education. It's about also providing those resources post-training, you know, because 100%. It's all well and good to be like, yeah, you guys can go learn these skills, but then you throw them out into the world and then there's no support, you know, there's no artistic support. There's no grants for people to get, or if there are grants, they're so, I guess, small that people aren't able to do anything with them really. So I was saying that it would be great if we got more sponsorship from like our Ministry of Culture to be like, hey, artists, like anybody who has a building will offer you some kind of subsidy or something if you want to house like a few artists here, like at a discounted rent price, you know, something like that to really help meet people's needs so that they're able to create. Because I feel like too, as artists, a lot of times we tend to romanticize the struggle a little bit, where we're like, oh, it's from struggle comes great art, but that's not true. I've heard that
before. Starving artist.
It's like, if I'm hungry, I can't think. You know, like I can't think about anything but food. Like I'm starving, I'm falling asleep. Like if there are holes in the soles of my shoes, like how am I gonna focus on anything else but that, right? I don't have energy at the end of the day to create, or if I do create, it's gonna take so long, not because the process is grueling, but because I just don't have the time, you know?
So for our listeners too, what is the orange economy? I caught you say that. What is that? What is the orange economy, speaker?
Sure. So the orange economy just refers to anything in the creative sector that generates revenue. So we can talk about like music, we can talk about art, we can talk about performance, dance, anything like that. For me, my niche, of course, is animation and illustration. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we have been saying we want to tap into it, but the way to do so, and I've learned this from visiting other countries as well, like when I was in Philadelphia, I was blown away by just how many art residencies were available for people, and it was so crazy. Every minute I'm seeing these advertisements like, oh, this artist residency here, come here and make art for us, we'll pay your rent. My cousin, she was who I was staying with at the time, she was saying, yeah, they put me up in this nice apartment because like the landlords, they love artists and they have a basement, and they're like, yeah, you can just keep your stuff here, it's cool. And I was like, wow, I wish I could find something like that. When I was in France, they were speaking about an insurance scheme specifically for artists as well, so that they could be insured while they create art. They were speaking about just ways to not just give them grants and say, do what you want with the money, but also to create that safety net, for them to be able to create and not be worried about like where the next meal is going to come from, or where they're going to have a place to stay, so that they're able to really focus on building that revenue and exporting to international markets and local markets. Because for me personally, like, COVID was devastating, but because we were all trapped inside so much, I was really able to like hone into my skills and reach an international market, which was amazing for me because the world just became suddenly smaller because we were all online. So people were more willing to like reach out and come into this digital sphere and meet people digitally and work with them. But then I'm really hoping that, as we continue to get further away from that point in history, well, I wouldn't even say history, that point in the present, because it still feels pretty present today. But as we move further from that time, we don't shift back into just thinking the only thing that we can do is for the people in our immediate environment, that there's so many connections to be made all over the world. There's so much knowledge, there's so much money as well, like, and there's so many people who believe in you as well, like all over the world. But I feel like also nothing feels better than having your home believe in you. Just having your
100%.
home country invest in you, like your ministers being like, hey guys, I know you're working really hard, so we're going to put the effort in to make sure that you get somewhere. We're going to acknowledge you and value what you do.
That's awesome. So Tajha, looking ahead, what are your goals for your career in animation and digital marketing?
Sure.
And are there any specific projects or collaborations you're excited about that you can share?
Yeah, I can. So I would say my goals have, I wouldn't say changed, but they've evolved a lot. I've always wanted to be an art director at a company, so that's something I've been working on recently. I've been an assistant director on a couple shoots locally as well that I'm doing with one of my business partners. I will, once that is settled, I will definitely be back on here to talk to you guys about that, because trust me, it's gonna be huge. Like, you guys get the breaking news, right?
We appreciate that.
Heard it here first.
Of course, yeah. So there's that I've been working on. But I also want to eventually be the person to own that space and be able to give artists that discounted rent, to be like, yeah, you guys can come create in this space and get discounted rent, because I feel that especially in Jamaica, it's pretty difficult to get a place to rent right now. The housing market is crazy all over the world, but it's also crazy in Jamaica too. So I would love to not, lift the ladder up as I'm going up. I really want to just make sure it stays down, and I want to make sure that the steps are stable and it's not greased. It's like, oh, let me wipe up this part for you so that you don't slip as you come up, I want to just build on that, and I also want to like uplift my community and the people around me as well. So those are the things I've been working on. I've also recently gotten an agent out in Florida for my children's work, so she's the one who handles like the contract with the publishers and everything. So I really want to see that develop and hopefully get like a children's book and like Little Golden Book or something. That would be my dream. I think I'd probably cry, because that would be crazy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. One of the projects I'm actually looking forward to the most, I got released recently. It was about electric vehicles in Jamaica, and it was an educational book for children to get to know about electric vehicles and the benefits of them and why they're here in Jamaica. It got launched recently, so I have the official launch coming up, which is amazing. It's out on Amazon. I'll share the link with you guys so that you can take a look at it. But yeah, I mean, amazing things are happening, right? And I'm really excited, and I just want to share it with everybody. Lots of things are happening, and I think my dreams are coming true.
You're definitely glowing. I can definitely see it. It's radiant.
100%. And any of those links that you want to boost up, just share with us. We'll target it and keep it in the show notes and pump it out throughout our networks that we have.
Thank you.
We definitely want to hear from you again.
Yeah.
Again, we have Tajha Winkle here on the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. Again, those who may have missed in the first half, Tajha played an instrumental part in our development of the podcast, as she was the creator of the intro for the show that those of you will see, those on YouTube, and also you listen in on your respective podcast platforms. So it's very special having Tajha here on the show. So as we transition here, just learn a little bit more about Tajha, and also a little personal thing, what she likes to do for fun and things of that nature. So I'd like to get into that. I think that should be a treat for everyone. Tajha, so I understand that there's like there's like this art show that's coming up. I guess you're working with a business partner, but is that something that you can tell us more about and go into that a bit?
Sure, I can give you some snippets. So we are currently working on a project together to do what I was talking about before, like uplift the creatives in Jamaica, and to especially give them a platform to highlight their work. We've recently come out with a website as well, just to highlight the art partners that we've been working with as well to really make this vision pop. This is going to be a pretty great event when it does launch, because it's not just going to be a one-off thing. It's going to be a multi-platform event. We're talking about like social media launches, catalog launches. Like it's going to be a pretty big project. It's already been in the works. We are also going to eventually be looking for sponsorship as well once we get everything settled down, so that we can really make this show one of the highlights, I guess, of next year, ideally. I can't say anything more about it because under NDA, but
Don't you love those? Don't you love those?
yeah, right? They're like, oop, not too much now. But yeah, trust
Right.
me, it's going to be amazing. I'm super excited. I'm really excited, guys. It's gonna be awesome. And I would love it if you guys could even come down to Jamaica and experience it too. Like, I'll tell you in advance so you can book your ticket and just get there.
Yeah.
Let us know. And then how does one go about sponsoring an event like that? Do you have to be in the orange economy, or can you be outside the economy?
You can be outside of it. The only thing you'd really need to do is just reach out to us. We would have a meeting with you guys to just figure out like how much you'd be willing to sponsor the event for, if it's going to be monetary or if it's going to be something else like equipment, etc. My email, you guys will have my email, of course, so you can reach out. I'll also send you the email of my business partner as well, and also just the links to our site and our social media platforms, so that you guys can see that the work that we've been doing, and help us to, I guess, continue to make great work and build on these foundations, because trust me, it's going to be huge.
Nice.
Are you, and can you share the name of the art show, or is that something you have to keep under wraps?
I'm going to keep it under wraps for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
No worries. No problem. What are the most, in your opinion, in your estimation, Tajha? What are the most significant emerging threats in cybersecurity today, and how should organizations prepare for them?
Sure. So I would say one of them is just like personal data. Your personal data, a lot of times in especially software now, you're getting auto accepted into things that you initially didn't sign up for. So for example, I know with AI emerging in the art community, there's been like a lot of hot debate around that topic, especially in regards to intellectual property, because a lot of times artists who use cloud platforms, like for example, Adobe, when we use those platforms within like an office setting, and we're sharing it with each other because you're able to work simultaneously on the same project, we are trusting that once there's an NDA involved, that like the work is going to stay here in the cloud.
Right.
But then once they start training the AI on your work, we are saying, okay, now I don't know if somehow somebody's going to generate something that looks like an asset that we made for this specific client, or is going to take like a part of, like, for example, some feature that was predominant in this production, and then someone's going to use the AI to generate something really similar, and then the client's going to come back and be like, hey, how did this get out? You know, I told you guys you needed to keep it under lock and key. Like, how did this happen? So that's one of the main concerns I would say that we're having in the art community with cybersecurity, just having our intellectual property protected, and our data as well. And even a lot of artists too have experienced their work being generated without their consent online, to the point where their digital footprint is super muddled. So you'll Google a name and then AI work will pop up first, and then not their actual work. So then, of course, it leaves your audience confused, especially if it's not on brand for you. So you're like,
Right.
hey, you know, my name is attached to this thing, but I didn't make this. And sometimes it happens so often that, like, you physically just can't keep up. So those are the things that are really affecting the art community right now, just trying to really figure out what to do about it and protect our intellectual property, because of course nobody wants their name attached to something that they didn't do or something that goes completely against their brand. Because I know I would personally be angry if somebody attached my name to some work that was like offensive in some way, and
Right.
the only way I can prove it wasn't me is to I don't even know, like, show you the files on my computer to be like, I didn't make this, you know, or
Right.
so it's been a lot, but there has been software that's been launched for artists to essentially protect their data. One of which is Nightshade, where you would put your art through this data protection software. So if any AI scrapes your work without your consent, the image that would come up would corrupt the data essentially, so they wouldn't get
Oh.
anything from it.
What's it
Yeah,
called? A
Okay.
Nightshade?
yeah, Nightshade.
Nightshade.
Yeah, if you could send us a reference on that, that would be appreciated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, of
I
course, of
never heard of
course.
that.
Yeah, never. And
Yeah.
so I envision like literally your IP name and I guess signatures are on that work and it obfuscates that, like it hides all of that.
Yeah, it completely it hides it in a way where it looks like, you know, when you have a corrupted file then everything looks garbled.
Right.
It's like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
This,
And what's the biggest repositories that y'all like artists have to put their work? Is it somebody else's studio or is it somewhere like a cloud somewhere? Like what's the biggest technology that y'all upload your work to?
I would say for most of us it would be the cloud. Most of us have our work in the cloud, but through Nightshade, it doesn't stay in the app. So once you generate it, you would just re-download the image. For that, it's mostly just about posting on social media, and on your websites as well, so that even if it gets scraped, a lot of it too, I say, boils down to consent. Because it's one thing if, like, you say, all right, yeah, you can do this. Like, it would be cool to see a clown nose on my artwork. But if you don't consent to that, then
Right.
it just feels really offensive, you know, and like artists take that really personally because, you know, that's your baby out there in the world, and it's like, what are you doing? You know, I didn't tell you could do this with it. So yeah, Nightshade just helps you put it through. You're able to re-download it with the protection on, and then you're able to upload it, your work, anywhere without worrying about it being directly scraped and then them having that data.
Okay, so that's definitely a challenge that plays into the technology part. Can we you touched on it earlier. Can you go over some challenges you specifically faced in your journey and how you overcome them to get where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I can say one of them was definitely the software aspect of it. A lot of times, most of the software that I use, and the hardware I can't access in Jamaica. So a lot of times I have to go abroad to buy my stuff, or I have to ask relatives to buy it for me, and then I pay them back. So that tends to make things a little complicated. And I can also say too, our banking system is another challenge, because we need to be able to process international payments, of course, for people who are paying things to us, or we also need to process international payments for recurring subscriptions. And funnily enough, not every software company with subscriptions accepts our region, which is crazy. Yeah. I actually encountered that. I remember I went on a website to download a specific software, and I was looking for my region and I found it and I clicked my country. It redirected me off the site completely. Then it was like, you're gonna have to talk to a third party seller about this because we don't sell to you guys. And I was like, but it's software. Like, what do you mean? It was really nuts. So that's another barrier that we have to breakthrough, I would say, just people not realizing that the Caribbean exists, or even just, I don't know, is a viable source of income for their software, like a viable customer base.
And we're just curious, where did it redirect you to? Did it redirect you to a reseller out of the country?
No, it just said you should go to a third party. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know. All right. And I did try, but the third party, the price was crazy. It was like, so usually the software would come with different ones attached, the one that I was looking at. But the third party was just selling one software for the price of like 3 separate softwares. It was not a fun time finding that out. And those are things you don't realize until you actively try to do it. Because a lot of the advice online, again, is really based in like North America and from like a North American perspective. So when you go online and they're like, oh, it's so easy. You just do X, Y, Z, and then you have the software. But then you start trying to do X, Y, and then Y starts breaking down into YA, YB, and then bullet points under bullet points, and you just can't get to Z just because you're in a different region from them. It's really crazy sometimes.
That's very interesting. That just learning more about, of course, yeah, and our friends, you can attest to this as we've, our previous, especially going into season 1, just learning more about the cybersecurity of Jamaica. Just a lot of things that we just didn't. Honestly, we just never heard about here in the States.
And it's
not
infuriating.
talked about.
It's actually, this is the third strike. I mean, no cybersecurity program, and the resellers issue, the digital divide. I mean, you would think like these are still barriers in the United States, obviously, but now compounded in such a small area, it's almost like crippling. It's almost like an analysis paralysis. Like how do we not cross that gap in a near peer, like a person that we share industry with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even recently we had a fiasco with our banking sector. One of our payment processors failed us, I would say. Careful with my words here. They failed us in a very terrible sense. When people thought they were paying for a service, they actually got the money refunded to their accounts. And a lot of people weren't notified of this. So this happened for like 6 months continuously. It was reported multiple times. Nothing was done about it. But then pretty recently, the bank decided, all right, we're going to freeze everyone's cards who this glitch affected. And then the money that we didn't collect for that particular service, we're going to just take all of it at once. So a whole swath of people, like their account balance just dropped to negative numbers, because they were just taking like 6 months off of that particular service all at once. And it was crazy because people were like, in a digital economy, like, how are we not informed? Like, why didn't you say anything before this happened? How did you not notice this error in your system for like 6 months? Why did this go on so long? There's just so many questions. And then even just people asking, like, was it even legal to do that? I mean, do we have rights where that's concerned? It's just a whole lot of things. And, as society gets increasingly more digitized, we're often going to keep having that conversation where it's like, how do we treat our people in a digital economy? Like, it's different when you walk into a store and like you swipe your card and the card declines immediately. It's like, okay, can't pay for the goods, then either I leave or I pay cash. It's different when it's a digital service where you get the receipt that says you paid, but on the bank's end, it says you didn't. So it makes things really complex. So something like that happening is just, to me, it was insane. It was painful. You saw people who were like, I just got paid and I can't even afford to go to work tomorrow because of what the bank did. It's really like, yeah, it's so messy.
And this happened throughout the whole country.
Yeah, the entire country, yeah. It was really painful, honestly.
I don't want to get started on bank rants. I can't imagine the whole country. Oh my God. Like, I'm gonna be real, like that just triggered my thought process, like a whole country. So we've seen that in cybersecurity with Estonia, where it was an intentional malicious digital city, they called it. God, it's gotta be like 14 years ago now. I can't believe I'm saying that. But yeah, we seen that when it was an adverse attack or adversarial, attack. But amateur hour stuff like that for a whole country, that's not cool at all.
Yeah, a lot of
That's
people
not
were
cool.
upset about it because that's not the only bank that handled that type of payment processing. We had other banks handling it, and they did not have that problem with that specific system. So a lot of people were saying, how could this bank be so lax? I mean, it's supposed to be one of the biggest banks on the island, and like, how did that happen for 6 months? Like, come on, guys, get it together. Like, come on. And punishing your customers for that, it was just not a
Just
good time.
Just one sub question before we get into the next one. Is are banks regulated in Jamaica? Who like, are they regulated by Jamaica or someone else?
So they are regulated. They're regulated by the Bank of Jamaica. And they're also holding to, I think, international banking standards as well. I don't know the technicalities of it, but everything is regulated in Jamaica. The banking sector is actually really regulated. It's just sometimes, I guess, things slip through. I guess so. I don't know what else to say about that. Just sometimes things slip through. And I think too, because we're also part of the international economy as well, there are certain things that our banking system has to get right. I remember recently there was an overhaul of certain banks and the systems that they had to use in order to approve customers. So lots of customers had to go into banks and give them either different information or update their information at the bank because there were some new policies going on internationally and our banks weren't up to date as yet. So we do have standards in Jamaica for that. And we're held by local standards as well as international standards too, which is why the whole thing it was just so shocking. Like, it threw so many people for a loop because it's like, you want to trust your bank is processing your payments. And if they're unable to, you want to trust that they're going to tell you, like, hey, something's weird here. We're going to either, I don't know, like pause the card's availability in the service until we figure something out. But I don't know.
Something.
Yeah.
That's such a rabbit hole to go down, but let's go on to the next one here. What was the first piece of technology that sparked your interest in cybersecurity?
In cybersecurity, what can I say? Oh, so everybody has had that moment where they're on their PC, back in like 2008, 2009, and you're on LimeWire and you're downloading stuff, and then all of a sudden you download a file and the whole computer just starts glitching out like crazy. Like, oh, I just downloaded a virus. I thought. Like, I thought this was a Beyonce song. I don't know where this virus came from.
Before you get that letter from your service provider, we all
right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's why I started laughing. It's like, oh man, you talking about my childhood right now.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say that's what sparked it because I just found that idea so interesting. It was like, computers can get sick. That's crazy. And I remember too, because my dad would be the one after that, of course, to be like, I'll handle the downloads from now on. I was like, all right, cool. So he'd be like, don't click the big green button. I know you want to. It's tempting. But it's that little green button right there. That's the right button for you to click to download. And I was just so fascinated by that. I'd be like, how do people make like sites that way to one green button is wrong and one green button is right? So I think that is one of the things that really sparked my interest in it. But of course, it started developing over time when I would immerse myself in like more of the literature about it. I remember reading a lot about the 2008 recession, about the 2000s .com bubble bursting, just reading a lot about just different technologies and how glitches in the system can have such far-reaching implications. I remember too, I also got really interested in learning about computer viruses when I was little because there was this website called BrainPop. I don't know if you guys know it, but it had this little robot named Moby and this guy named Tim, and it was animated, and they would talk about like different things from like a kid-friendly perspective. And one of the things that they would talk about were viruses. And I remember specifically they mentioned like the worm virus, and I was just like, oh, that's so cool. Like it just eats everything. I was like, oh, that's crazy. And And I think too the cartoons as well were also really into that. I remember Fairly Odd Parents had an episode about a virus where Timmy went into the computer to become a computer virus to get back an email he accidentally sent to his crush, and it was so cool. Like,
include both of those, and if you got the links, include both of those. We'll put those in the show notes.
I will. Yeah. So it was so fascinating. Like, I think I didn't have a choice but to be interested, to be honest. Like, just growing up in that era where like technology was changing so quickly. And I guess the internet was really different too. Like, it was more of a Wild West, I guess, back then. So you just had access to see so many things go wrong and to see so many things go right, and just have to DIY fix a lot of things. Sometimes you go on Reddit and you're like, hey, my computer just did this weird thing, and you have to, figure it out as you go along. But yeah, I'd say those are the moments I can remember that really sparked my interest in cybersecurity.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Okay. You got it.
No, I'll just quickly say that I think that's pretty awesome, as you mentioned, even with the Fairy Odd Parents example, just having that exposure into technology, and I think sometimes that's all it really takes. It doesn't have to be necessarily with in a classroom or any sort of formal means. It could be just something you see on a commercial, or in this case, an animated TV show. So I mean, whatever sparks that interest and that desire, that you're like, oh man, I want to see. I see it in this show, but maybe let me see how that really plays out. If I want to learn more about this, or you start doing more research on it, this and that, and then next thing you know, man, you're like knee deep in taking this PC apart and just learning how it works. So no, I think that's cool. Yeah, we could all get that inspiration from any form of means. It doesn't have to necessarily be in a classroom or anything like that. So I thought it was pretty cool that you brought that up.
100%. Okay, now the most important and softer note question: what is your favorite coffee preference that helps you get through the day?
Sure. So I am very biased. I love Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee.
Again, that's another time. We got that on the show a lot.
Yeah, I love Blue Mountain coffee. My favorite way to have it though is with condensed milk. So you have the condensed milk in there, and then sometimes I'll add a bit of vanilla and cinnamon and just mix it up real nice. I also have a milk frother, so I'll usually like mix the condensed milk with the flavoring and a bit of hot water to make it really foamy, and I'll give myself like little latte art because I feel like eating is an experience, so I want to make it fun and cute. So I'll do that. Like, everything in my life is art, so I'll make art with my coffee just to enjoy it better, because I feel like when you look at it and it looks cute, you're like, yeah, I'm enjoying this 10 times more than I would if it was just like a regular old cup of coffee.
See, now you're describing pretty much like my childhood growing up with my parents, especially my father. We talk about condensed milk. Anytime he has, now he doesn't necessarily drink coffee, but any like hot tea or anything like that, he'll definitely go for the condensed milk. And so for me, I was like, I didn't. Because of course, born in the States. Well, my parents from Jamaica, and of course just raised in that culture. So I've always seen that. I remember like Saturday mornings, have the condensed milk with their coffee or tea or anything like that. So and of course the Blue Mountain coffee, of course, that's like number one. So
we got to hit them up, man.
Yeah. That actually created some. Went back to the memory database for me. So no, I thought that's awesome. That's really cool. If you could have any superpower to help you in cybersecurity, what would it be and why?
What I would love to do is to have that Timmy Turner power to like be able to go into the computer, because sometimes when you have a problem that you want to fix, or like, for example, you send an oopsie email, you're just like, I just want to go in there and just grab it back. I just want to snatch it right out my mailbox, So that's one thing I wish I could do. Or even like when I'm in my software and something's like going wrong, I just want to be able to just walk in there and be like, click, click. Okay, now you should work better because I got rid of the problem. Like, get out of there,
You sound like a bounty hunter to me.
there wouldn't be any need for help desk. You know what I'm saying?
I know,
absolutely
right?
not. Right.
That's pretty cool.
Would there be any incidents either? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Get
Done.
that out of here.
Finish. You know. And last question, Tasha. What are some of your hobbies, interests, or recreational activities that you enjoy? You know, outside of work, in general.
So I love feeding wild birds. I created this whole section in my garden for them. So like I have bird feeders up and plants like surrounding it and a bird bath. So I'll go out there and I'll feed them and I'll give them water. And I'll just look at them and talk to them sometimes because they bring me so much joy. They're very cute. I have how many birds? Oh, we get so many birds. I think at one point the most birds we've had were like 20. Just like, and they're many different birds. They're like sparrows, finches, doves, pigeons. Some birds I can't even identify, like tiny birds, hummingbirds. That's something I really love to do. I also love to hike. I love being out in nature. I love the smell of like the mountain air. I love hiking. So those are my two main hobbies that I love to do. I also like to bake. I love to bake cookies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right. What type of cookies?
My signature cookies are chocolate chip lavender.
Lavender.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I had to order some chocolate chip lavender cookies.
Have you? I've heard you tried lavender. You tried?
Yeah,
lavender
I have
cookies
recently. Yeah, I have. It's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good by itself, baked especially. But I never tried it in a cookie.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Like it enhances the flavor.
Yeah.
I've had like I think lavender like infused in like an ice drink or something like that, but no, for sure never had it in a cookie before. So
yeah, it's very strong. So usually like you don't use too much, but the flavor is very like floral and delicious. Yeah. And if you make your cookie with brown sugars, that molasses makes it really earthy and nice. It's incredible.
Add that to the list. Check.
Kiss to that.
With the Jamaican blue coffee now.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
You got paired right.
That would be a perfect pairing, honestly. I might just get that after we're done with this.
Right.
And that's awesome.
And for the birds, if you like, I just heard you say that if you have the Merlin app, so a person I hike with, a buddy I hike with at a nature center told me about it. You download the Merlin app and then you let open the mic up. It'll ID the birds off their chirp live on your phone. Okay. Yeah, so if you try that out, I've been trying it out like crazy where I am.
Yeah. All right, I'm definitely going to do that then because I want to know who these birds are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Tajha, it has been an extreme pleasure having you on the show. Finally, again. But as we get ready to wrap up, is there anything you want to share with our listeners?
Well, just some words of motivation, guys. No matter where you are, no matter what part of the world you're in or where you are in your career, if you believe in yourself, if you are able to really just go in and embrace your dreams, just do it. I mean, not everybody has to understand. The path might be unconventional, but if you're happy, it's really worth it. I'm happy, it's worth it. Very unconventional path I've taken, but I'm really grateful. And don't forget to reach out to your communities because I guarantee there's somebody else on a similar path as you looking for help or looking to just, be a friend in the experience. So embrace the journey. It's not always about the end, and just be open to it. Open to the art of life, I guess.
The art of life. That's a great way to put it. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So, and thank you, Tajha, and thank you to our listeners, both listening and watching, for joining us for another episode of the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, explore more engaging content in the Alive Podcast Network app. By supporting this podcast and nearly 100 other Black-hosted shows, you can enjoy ad-free listening while contributing to a diverse range of voices in the podcasting space. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more insightful conversations with you in our next episode. So until then, keep brewing those ideas and stay curious about cybersecurity. All right, that's it. It's a wrap. We're out of here. Peace.